was like that. He spit and touched his tongue, and the congregation responded, yuck. That's how they did things back then, right? What can I tell you? You know, I was reading this week in preparation for the sermon that in the Lutheran, looking at the liturgy, and particularly the baptism liturgy, there was a place in the Lutheran liturgy where the pastor would spit, and then he would place his saliva on the child's ear and on the lips, a way of opening the child's heart and mind to the presence of God. But I've decided not to do that.
Thank you.
For obvious reasons. So, nevertheless, thought I'd just share that with you. You know, you think you know somebody, and everybody in this room has had this experience at one time or another, and to realize, too, that there have been times when people have been surprised by you as well. Sometimes in good ways, amazing ways, sometimes in not such good ways. You think you know someone, and then all of a sudden something happens. You catch a glimpse of another side of a person, because people have many sides. You suddenly realize, wow, maybe I didn't really know them as well as I did. Maybe it's, and I've seen this before, I've experienced this, an incredibly kind and tender, heartbreakingly tender word from some old crusty curmudgeon who wouldn't even say hello to his own grandmother. And you realize, in spite of all the other experiences you've had, that deep down inside that chest somewhere, there is a heart. And it's beating. Or maybe it's a person who's really quiet, shy, retiring, incredibly gentle, and all of a sudden something happens. And there is this flash of unbelievable anger, maybe some incredibly cutting remarks. And you stand there and you think to yourself, wow, I never knew that existed in that person. That somewhere down in that heart as well, there's a cavern filled with lava and smoke and steam. A woman who had a disturbed daughter heard where he was. She came and knelt at his feet, begging for help. The woman was Greek. He said, stand in line, take your turn. And the children get fed first. If there's any left over, the dogs get it. We've been over this text umpteen times, but it still manages to shock me. To get us, in a sense, to do a double take and to ask, is that really our Jesus? Is that the Jesus who fed the 5,000? Is that the Jesus who told the parable of the prodigal son or the prodigal father, depending on your perspective? Is that the one who told the parable of the Good Samaritan? Is that the one who said, love your enemies? Is that the one who said, turn the other cheek? Didn't he just call that woman, never mind, in a kind of a paradoxical way? This brief encounter evokes trust. Now, it sounds kind of strange, but just follow me. Bear with me. Humor me. It evokes trust. I never tire of reading, and I've made this comment before, it seems strategically placed always at Easter. We have found something new that completely upends the Christian faith. I can assure you, as someone who has studied Scripture for umpteen years and is no scholar but is a pretty good theological middleman, I can assure you there are no secrets that I am aware of, or any other theologian that I know of, that would upend the Christian faith. There are no secrets to upend your faith. And so here is a story that I think you would agree with me doesn't necessarily put Jesus, at least initially, in the best light. And so not only does Mark tell the story without taking pen to it and amending it and editing it, which any of us could do and make Jesus look like a shining star, but Matthew also relates the same story in his gospel. These are smart people. Mark and Matthew record, and probably deep in their mind they're thinking to themselves, this is going to make somebody upset. This might even make Pastor Oberle's life more difficult on September 9th, 2018. But even so, it is more important to tell the truth. Tell the truth. What really happened? What was really said? How did they interact? How did she respond? Now, there is some who try to soften the blow of these hard words of Jesus, and they are hard words, by saying, well, really, he was only testing her. That's all he was trying to do, and he knew exactly what she was going to say, and what he would do, and how eventually it would all work out, and everybody would be happy. But my response would be essentially twofold when people take that tack. First, I would suspect that you might have problems with the actual genuine humanity of Jesus himself. To be human means, amongst other things, that the future, even the next minute, what will happen at 9:05? I have not the slightest idea, and neither do you. The future, even the brief future, is shrouded in darkness. Secondly, if that is the case, that Jesus is just playing a game, it makes these words of Jesus cruel, since he's merely just toying with another human being who is absolutely desperate and in tremendous pain. It would be as if a couple of weeks ago at St. Catherine's of Siena, the doctors had come in and said to my father and my sister, she's going to make a full and complete recovery. Just kidding. How cruel would that be? How cruel would that be? And so this powerless, penniless woman with no status, no pull, but who loves her daughter to death, and knows in the marrow of her bones that the only answer to the terrible problems she finds herself confronted with and her daughter's malady is actually standing right in front of her at this very moment. Much like the woman who pursued Jesus through the crowd, saying, if only I can get my hands on him, even for a second. Like the woman who wore the judge out by seeking justice again and again and again. This woman, desperate and powerless, fixes her eyes with expectation and trust, and knows that somehow, if anyone can find a way, he can find a way. And then the response, but Master, the dogs under the table get the scraps dropped by the children. And Jesus is blown away. Matthew and Mark make that clear, that Jesus is genuinely surprised. As I've said to you a million times, Jesus was not born in Bethlehem, and then a couple of years later, Joseph and Mary handed him the script that he had to follow to the absolute T. Life is filled with surprises, even for Jesus. And so this morning, this one who had confounded Pilate, who had tripped up Herod, who had tied the Pharisees and the Sadducees in knots, is absolutely rocked by a woman who loved her daughter and who knew that he and he alone was the answer. A wise man, one who I have never met, but in many ways consider one of my pastors, says this. He says, be sure to file this story away. Life being what it is for all of you, you will inevitably need to be reminded of this woman's example. It's an example of hope that has legs, of hope that keeps moving and knocking at the front door and at the side door, and if need be, to go to the back door. And if those won't budge and that doesn't work, then we go to the windows. Thornton Wilder used to say of hope is like an energy that flows on, searching and exploring every nook and cranny, every single possibility, and refuses to believe that the trouble that you're in at any given moment is all that there is. File this story away, Eugene Peterson says, because desperate times come, and they come to us all. You will find yourself emboldened by an example of a faith that doesn't know how to quit. Of course, an important question to raise, and here the text, it really offers no clue. But in a sense, I ask you as well. After the storm passes, after the girl is healed, after the storm passes and suddenly the wild waves have become a tranquil pool, will that desperate time prove to have been a moment of renewal, of a deeper walk with Christ, of a deeper relationship with God? Or has it just become a passing religious fad? I still remember to this day, and the woman still attends to this church, and she's one of the sweetest human beings I've ever met in my life. I will not tell you her name. She doesn't come to the 8:30 service anyway. But I remember her saying to me, "Where is so-and-so? We've missed them lately." And I just shrugged my shoulders and I said, she said, "When they were down and out, they sure knew where you were. When they were down and out, they sure knew the church's number." And I'll tell you, in all honesty, I'm glad that they did. And if I had to do it all over again, we would go again, because that's what Jesus would have us do. But I understood what she was saying. Almost, it's been 17 years, hasn't it been? Can you believe that it's been 17 years since planes screamed over Manhattan and slammed into some of the biggest buildings on the planet? Fire rained down on innocent people. Miles and miles away, at 35,000 people, there were people who were literally fighting for their lives. Those were anxious times in our lives. And many people, for the first time in their life, went to their knees. The weeks following, people would just come to St. Mark. They'd literally walk off the street. They'd sit in my office, their hearts broken and empty, their eyes vacant. And people would say, "Could I just sit in the church?" And then we would say, "Of course you can. And you can take all the time you want." Sundays came and there was no place to park. Sundays came and you actually had a hard time actually even finding a place to sit. The Sunday after 9/11, there were almost 650 people here at St. Mark Lutheran Church. People were in pain, and the confusion was absolutely downright palpable. We were told by the experts, and I don't have a very high opinion of experts. Have you ever noticed there's always some crisis and the experts always weigh in on after the fact? I'd be more impressed if they weighed in before it actually happened. And you tell me that's not true. Tell me that's not true. But I always loved an expert, okay. But we were told that life in the United States would never be the same. Now there are some people in the military, people who had loved ones in the military who have paid a terrible price, and their lives have never been the same. There are people who went to work on 9/11, and my parents and my sister actually know people whose mothers and fathers never came home. Life for them has never been different, has never been the same. But the reality is that for each and every one of you in this room, all of you, and myself included, we may be aware and cognizant of our vulnerability in ways that we weren't before. But I would argue with anyone here, anytime, that life is as superficial and self-centered as it has ever been. You tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not. What was an incredible crisis and could have been the beginning of a deeper walk with God has proven to be nothing less than a fad. We are free to come and to go. We are free to keep God at a distance. We are free to tell God to go away. In fact, I seem to recall they tried to do that, in fact, to him, and rode him out of town on a rail, but he did come back, which of course is the only reason to be here this morning. To be human, Eugene Peterson says, is to be in trouble. All of us at some point. Take my advice, he says. Remember this story.